Welcome to Tardigrade Thursday. This is Jocelyn Matthews. Today we have with us James Woe, who is the founder and chairman of ETC Labs. ETC Labs, or Ethereum Classic Labs, is the leading supporter of the Ethereum Classic blockchain, which is a public blockchain with a market cap of 1.5 billion. Working with the ETC core development team, ETC Labs builds and maintains key applications, solutions, and tools to ensure a secure and thriving Ethereum Classic ecosystem. Through its accelerator program, ETC Labs invests in projects and initiatives that further financial inclusion, women's participation in technology, and wildlife conservation. As part of these social impact efforts, ETC Labs issues grants to propel research and development in scalability, storage, interoperability, and adoption in the greater blockchain economy. James, welcome. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. This is James from ETC Labs. We founded companies back to 2018. So we continuing supporting the building the ecosystem of our Ethereum Classic.
So as founder and chairman of ETC Labs, you are a leading supporter of Ethereum Classic, or ETC for short. Let's just say that from here on out. And as I said earlier, it's a public blockchain. You have a market cap of 1.5 billion. From what I understand, in 2015, you also founded the Digital Finance Group, where you oversee a hedge fund that's largely outperforming the market, and a VC portfolio that includes Brave, Ledger, Circle. And I heard that it's currently valued at 253 million. I believe you're also manager at Matrix Exchange. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Of course, I started business in this industry back to the 15s about DFG stuff around investment. But when things move, I think, doing only investment is not enough to this industry. We think it's also important to building stuff. So at that time, we think two things probably make a lot of sense for me and for the company. The first is about, the public blockchain. So we choose Ethereum Classic to build. I think it's super promising. The other sector, which is pretty promising and big, is about exchange area, because you need always a kind of new capital moving to the space, and you need new kind of money moving to the space to support the building of the ecosystem. So I guess that's the reason why we start Matrix. So back to 2017, I go to Abu Dhabi to discuss with the government about ideas about, starting a licensed exchange there. So after a 3-year journey, and this April, we finally get a license and also get a, fiat channel from the banks in US. So I guess Q1 next year, we are going to launch the platform.
Thanks. So Matrix Exchange is licensed by Financial Services Regulatory Authority, right, in Abu Dhabi?
Yes.
Cool. Well, to ease into the conversation, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself. For example, how did you get involved in blockchain?
So I guess I start buying crypto. At that time, it's still so early stage. It's back to 2014. So it's only about Bitcoin, Litecoin. I start buying crypto at that time. I think as a finance background person, I never see things you can easily goes up like your 3x or goes down like your 20% or 30%. It's so quick. So it's actually, the volatility actually catch my eyeball about it. What is it? So I start to dig into it and see, and what is the basic logic about a cryptocurrency. Then I feel like, this is something really important and may change the financial industry in the future. So I really start care about it. After I dig into the technology for almost a year, then I feel like this is something I'm going to do in the future. So after a year kind of research, I start doing, fully committed to this industry. Then I start doing venture investment in the crypto industry. At that time, it's 2015 and 2016. It's, at that time, there's no tokens. It's all more about your actives or about different kind of infrastructure use cases or exchange around the Bitcoin ecosystem. So, I started to invest a lot of kind of projects, related to that ecosystem, including Brave, Circle, and Ledger apps. And 2017, I think it's a super exciting market because ICO becomes so big. And I guess, this is, the number of the users for cryptos grew up like 10x at that a year. So I think more people realize the importance of the tokens. And also at that time, I start, shifting a little bit from the focus from doing transacting deals to purchasing more tokens. I think either a solid, a robust infrastructure make a lot of sense. Also, you need a strong and solid ecosystem and different applications built on top of it. So we started doing both actually. So to now, we invest a lot of later stage protocols, including, ETC, Polkadot, Near, Solana, and a bunch of others. And also we care about the, application as well. So we also doing several investment in the Ethereum and Polkadot ecosystem. So that's how we start things. We think this, we actually grow and also learns together with the growth and the growth of the industry.
That sounds like a very exciting ride. So you took this financial background, you did like a year of research, then you started investing in the ecosystem, getting into Brave. And then 2017 you're looking at the value of the tokens and starting to shift your focus. So it seems like part of shifting your focus is that strong, solid ecosystem that you were talking about. And you're part of making that happen and actualizing that at Ethereum Classic Labs. What kind of work is your team doing now that you're most excited about there?
That's a great question, actually. Because we, as you may know, we start building ETC Lab and ETC Core back to 2018. I think ETC Core is doing pretty well. We do a bunch of hard fork. Right now, it's fully comparable with Ethereum. So I guess at an infrastructure level, so although the direction is a little bit different, like Ethereum moved to proof of stake, but we will stick to POW. But as the infrastructure for now, it's pretty solid. So basically, it's like a very, very robust infrastructure. You can build different kind of use cases and application on top of it. So I think that right now the focus of our team and also the team I'm most excited about is about how can we build a better ecosystem for ETC. So we actually doing this by two different methods. The first is we, as we do like stuff from back to 2018 is about incubator. So we give different, project, different, capital. Sometimes we make the investment. Sometimes we give in the grant. So it's totally flexible. Depends on the stage of the project. If it makes sense, then we were going to kind of support them to build on top of the ETC network. The other is we do a lot of partnership as well. Like earlier this year, we do a bunch of partnership with some Ethereum projects, including Chainlink, Gitcoin, and others. Obviously, we cooperate with Storj, and I think it's important to start in partner with something more. Because we didn't, selecting DeFi first. The reason is I think, there's something missing between the DeFi and the protocol. So once you need you have a very, very strong infrastructure, the next step for you to do, you need different kind of service tools and different kind of things to solve the problem of connecting DeFi use cases and also the infrastructure. That's very important. So we cooperate with a lot of project like that. Then I think for the final step, we can, more focus on end user application, including DeFi. So that's actually our strategy. So overall speaking, I think two things make, two methods we're working on. The first is giving grant and investment. The second is partner with different players. So overall speaking, I'm pretty excited about the ecosystem.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's so important to be really intentional about partnerships and to know like what you're trying to build in order to get there. Speaking of reaching out to other entities in other areas around the world, and clearly you have an international focus because you have a foot in several different markets. One of those is MENA, which is an abbreviation for Middle East and North Africa, MENA. I'd love to hear about what common experiences you see in the MENA region, specifically in relation to how decentralization is viewed versus what you're seeing in East Asia or in the United States.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think I think obviously different jurisdictions have different view on this. I think US is definitely a much mature market. The main difference is like your regulation, right? So I guess the strategy, as I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but as I understand, the strategy of US is how to make sure these whole decentralized things fit into the regulation right now, because we have a very, very mature, regulation and the policy toward different kind of financial asset in US. So the main target for the regulator, I understand, is like how to make sure this fit into the current system. But in Middle East, in like East Asia, it's totally different, story. It's because they view this as a very, very new asset and a kind of like a new technology. So instead of fitting to the current regulation framework, what they do is like kind of like create a new one. It's like make it legit and create a new one, and how to kind of thinking about create a new framework and then fit this into the new framework. So in that way, I guess obviously it makes sense for the different kind of jurisdiction, but I understand this is probably giving the new startups and new project more flexibility to have more new ideas. Because once it's kind of like partially against the previous framework, you still have flexibilities about changing the framework, right? So I guess this is actually much more promising. But also, US, I think it makes sense because already it's a so mature framework. Then you fit into that. That also makes a lot of sense. But I just want to say, obviously, different jurisdictions have different approach. But overall speaking, it's all positive toward crypto and decentralization.
Thanks. We have a C-level executive who is our chief compliance officer who thinks a lot about that and getting ahead of the curve. Definitely the US is a very different landscape than in other regions, specifically because of the regulations. And that's a great point that you make about how in some places you're trying to fit into an existing system, which carries its certain challenges. And then in other places, you're going from just like flat earth and building something up that's like considered to be entirely new. And those are two very different scenarios. Since we're talking about regional differences in decentralization, I'd love to hear, when you're going around to different regions, what investment thesis do you adhere to as you enter all these different markets? What first principles are you operating from? And do you look at infrastructure first, or do you look at use cases?
I think I think it has to be localized if you do an investment in that jurisdiction. Because if you just making a cross-border investment, then without taking a look at the overall background, it's a little bit dangerous. The most important thing is like it's not like everything will be successful in one jurisdiction. You have to choose what type of things will be successful in that jurisdiction. For example, I think clear in the internet industry that if you want infrastructure, then you have like Apple building iOS, and you have everything based in US, right? But if you talk about use cases, Alibaba and Tencent are not. At least they are the equal level of business compared to Amazon and others, right? So I guess it's totally depends on what is suitable in that jurisdiction. What I can see is if I want to invest into the protocols, and that need really a lot of excellent developers and great ideas to build on top of it. So actually, I prefer the deals either in US or in Europe. I think these are the jurisdiction order excellent basically developers located. So I guess that's their target. But as I go to other jurisdiction like the Middle East, like India, I prefer to invest into the exchange because you have a very, very big market and you have a lot of people and a lot of money who want to move into the crypto space. So it makes sense for you to invest in the exchange and help them to get access for this capital to move into the industry. So I guess, it's more depends on, what kind of business will be suitable and successful in the jurisdiction. So I think I have different kind of investment thesis in different jurisdictions.
That's brilliant. If you ever teach a class on that, I would definitely love to hear just all the use cases you've encountered and the different modifications you've made. Because, the thing about localization is you really have to bake it in from the beginning. And in a lot of markets, it's really critical. It's key to success to really understand where you're going into and how it will be perceived and how it will be used. I'd love to move on to talking about the partnership between Storj and ETC Labs. So one of the things about running an Ethereum Classic node is that it requires downloading and syncing an entire copy of the blockchain, right? And one of the most demanding requirements to support a copy of the blockchain is storage, which is where we come into the picture. And scaling that storage, since the blockchain is continuously growing database, syncing a new mainnet node can take a few hours, it can take a few days, it can take weeks, depending on your setup. And in the event of a client bug or network incident, recycling the node from scratch could be expensive downtime. So Storj and ETC Labs have been working together for the past several months to build out an experimental decentralized architecture for geth, the tool used to sync the blockchain for ETC developers. I'd love to hear any comments or thoughts you have about the partnership.
Sure. I think, first of all, I would say thank you to Storj. It's a great project. I have been talking to Sean since from 2017. I think it's being really a solid and robust technology. And really, the project is super, super promising. So I'm very glad that ETC Lab can work with Storj to solve the problem. It's actually a great partnership and cooperation. I think overall speaking, as you say, it's for us, that's no problem. We can set up nodes for ETC. I believe also for big miners, for big exchange, that's also no problem. You can set up nodes for ETC. That's not a problem. But what about small business? What about the small exchange, small miners, and small wallet? They also want to add in their, ETC protocol to their product, right? But the problem is like you're adding one public blockchain to one protocol is very expensive. So I think that's the very, very important, kind of question, problem about how to solve that. I think really, this sector, overall speaking, decentralized storage just make a lot of sense for actually you to expand your ecosystem. Is like making it much cheaper and make it feasible for different people to use it. So I think that's actually a great sector. And I also believe that I don't think Amazon, you can use that. It's totally centralized. It doesn't make any sense for you for public blockchain, a decentralized things, you use a centralized service, right? So it's actually make no sense. So actually, I think the most important, things here is like, although maybe, it still take times for decentralized storage to mature, but I fully believe this is the future. So I guess using that, make a lot of sense for us. And also storage is probably the most solid project in that sector. So I guess, cooperate and partner with you guys is actually, kind of excellent and great for us. I fully believe this will solve the problem of ETC and solve the problem of small business who want to add an ETC. This is actually a great thing for us and make a lot of sense for us.
And thank you. Right back at you. We also think that you're great too. So when Ethereum moves to proof of stake, Ethereum Classic will stay proof of work. Blockchain's more expensive than legacy systems. How can the Storj and ETC Labs partnership help alleviate those costs and or be competitive with other storage solutions?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess sometimes you always need to stake the full node, right? So as you run the exchange or run a service that it's you need to stake the full node, right? So as clearly the ETC blockchain is continuing growing, then the size for you to store it on your computer is not enough, right? So I guess definitely makes sense. Maybe a problem for the small business right now. I'm pretty sure it will be a problem for everybody in the future. So I guess this is something we have to solve. And by using and integrating the storage, I think this is the method to solve the problem. So I guess this is I would view this as a very important step to solve the infrastructure problem about Ethereum Classic.
Storj is working on a decentralized fast sync for Ethereum Classic, and that's making it faster and easier to instantiate new nodes. Where do you see growth in the network?
I think as we integrate storage, as we already done that, I feel that it probably makes sense for us talking to more wallet and exchanging different jurisdictions to convince them to add an ETC. Previously, their feedback to us is, okay, we can do that. But, compared to your users, ETC have like a million, wallet, right? And with money on top of it, with token on the address. So, they will compare how many users and how many capitals and how many, tokens will bring to their platform into their product, and also compare that to the cost they need to manage that protocol, right? So once already, since Storj already integrated with ETC, then we can convince them that, okay, you see, it is a much faster and much cheaper solution for you and easier for you. So right now, it's actually solved the problem about the cost, about overall resources you need to provide. Then compared to that, ETC can bring you a lot of users. Then it maybe add a lot of chance for the wallet and other service to add in certain Classic. Then once that happens, it will be a very, very robust and a very much solid ecosystem for ETC. Because you basically, if you use all the big players, you cannot cover everybody. There will be always people in some small regions using their local service, right? So it's if you only target a big player, you're not going to cover everyone. So that's actually important to make sure a lot of small business in small regions to adding a certain Classic, then it will get access to all the retail customers to actually invest or hold or supporting the ETC ecosystem. So I guess this is actually a very, very important thing to do. And as I mentioned the logic before, to reach out to end user, instead of just trying to make it one step to reach out to the end users, we rather build a much and partner with more solid tools and infrastructure, make sure our service already robust enough. Then the next step, the users can use it. So it's actually make more sense for us to take step by step and it grows gradually.
Thank you. I love what I keep hearing, this real passion for the ecosystem, and I love that. In many dApp use cases, blockchain applications tend to be a slower and less efficient way of solving a problem. And that's a problem for which there is an adequate existing centralized solution. DeFi emerged as the early use case, but where do you see the next wave of really useful decentralized solutions?
I think, as Uniswap issued the tokens, they're super crowded on SIM, right? So it's scalability is definitely an important problem important question or problem remains people to solve. Bitcoin have worked on like Lightning for a lot of years. Then they're written network on ETH as well. So one way to solve it is the layer 2 solution. The others, maybe as I said, they do shardings and they use sharding to solve the problem. There's a bunch of ways to solve that problem, but as far as I know, the most realistic and the most, I think, quickest and the most efficient way is decentralized storage. I think this is actually something very, very feasible that you can easily use it to solve the problem. So eventually, I think actually interesting in the market that it's not about the one with the best technology or the one with the best idea, we're organized and we're designed, we're win. It depends on which one's feasible. I totally think this is something will be much very, very big in the future is decentralized storage. So that's the first. The second is like about DeFi and about like end user applications. Right now, I think seems in the industry that NFT is pretty promising, and a lot of people are talking about that. But I guess for end user, the one important symbol is the target, and also the trend change so quickly. So you never know which will be the most popular use cases. It's actually also the same in the internet industry that you never know which will be the most popular use cases. Maybe this year it will be this one, the next year will be another one. So it's always changed very quickly. But as far as I can say that also, if we take a step back, something will be very important for all kind of use cases of DeFi. For example, DEX. You always need a DEX for the tokens to swap to another one, right? So I guess Uniswap will always be there, or and also the DEX solution will be there. And I think this will be very, very solid and very important. But speaking of the trend, speaking of which kind of really decentralized solution will be the trend in the future, it's really hard to predict. I think it will change very, very frequently, and it will change very quickly.
I totally agree. Well, James, thank you so much for taking time to be here today. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you and to meet you and just hear all of your thoughts. It's been really a treat. For listeners who would like to learn more about what you're doing or follow your project, how are the best ways to participate with ETC Labs?
Sure. I think you can easily find our website. It's www.etclabs.org, or you can also follow us on Twitter at ETC Labs, or follow my Twitter, Real James Wu. So you can do both, and just ping me on Twitter, or send a message to our official account, or contact us through the website. So so feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to talk to you about all kind of partnership and cooperations.
Great. And you know what? I'm going to put those links in the description box so that people can find your website, find your company Twitter, find your Twitter. And you know what else I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in a link for the official announcement from ETC Labs. And that even contains a little tutorial on how people can get their feet wet and get started with it. I just want to say thank you again. It's been so great to have you here. And I hope we can either have you back or have some other folks from ETC Labs in the future.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And nice talking to you.
Thanks, James. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
It's been Tardigrade Thursday. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.